All right. Well, I'm Andrew.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi,
I'm
Ty.
Ty.
Oh, hi, Ty. You didn't
How's it
even
going?
introduce yourself before I said hi, Ty.
How's it going?
Pretty good. It's Monday night. Ready to start talking and see what we can learn from each other. Um, we haven't officially titled this anything, but I kind of started calling it Fathers with Concerns Living the Gospel because we are both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are both fathers. I'm coming to you from northern Nevada, kind of the Reno and Carson City area at large. I am a handyman by trade. I am also an educator. I did 6 years in public schools. Um, I, I I enjoy learning about current events and kind of what's going on with the world and kind of experiencing some frustration too with the world. And we all have opinions. I don't want to discount anybody's opinions, but sometimes it's nice to talk to other people about it. So the point of this podcast is to kind of introduce some of these topics. Sometimes my wife doesn't always follow the news, so it's kind of nice to tell her about some of these things. And from someone that lives the gospel, it can be a unique perspective as well. So that's why I'm here, and Ty is with me. Ty, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes. My name is Ty. Andrew married my sister, so that makes you my brother-in-law. And I'm living here in Wisconsin. I live in southern central Wisconsin, pretty close to Madison. Live in a little town called Black Earth, the only Black Earth in the world. And yeah, I guess the only difference between Andrew and me is I'm a father with no concerns. My kids, I don't care what happens to them. Got three of them. I'll have plenty of other kids. So
Jesus
but
will come before anything happens anyway, right?
exactly.
No
They're
worries.
not, yeah, they're not old enough to be making me pull my hair out, but my hair is turning gray, and every day I get a new gray hair. So uh yeah, so I work in selling insurance, mostly working with old folks, and I also sell uh, health plans to seniors. So I work with old people, old fogies, and I love them. My goodness, they are so full, so chock full of wisdom and lots of great stories. So every day is an exciting adventure, meeting someone new and
And
hearing their life
and
story.
you had some real estate stuff going on. Were you getting into real estate too?
I do. I have my real estate license. I'm a licensed real estate agent. It's just weird because it's not the bulk of what I do, but it is something in the back of my mind. So if anyone anyone living in the Madison area, wants a realtor,
If
hit me
you're
up.
if you're coming to Madison, Ty's the guy.
or yeah, if you're turning 65 and you need help with a health plan, give me a call. Or you need life insurance. So if you're afraid your wife is planning to murder you, or if you're dying of old age, or you need to buy your dream home, give me a call. Any
But
any
but
life
don't.
situation, my life, or I will help you in your life in any way I can, and it's going to be one of those three things. So
Well, if your spouse is planning to murder you, make sure not to write the policy for the spouse. I guess it's the people
yes,
that are planning to murder that you should write the policy for, right?
I won't
For
even
their
tell my
spouse.
wife how much my insurance policy is because she'll find out I'm worth more dead than alive. So
I wonder about it sometimes myself. I'm not suicidal, but she could use the money. Let's not lie to ourselves here.
yes, yes, you
Well,
can.
thanks for doing this with me, Ty. Do you want to kind of introduce the topics that we're planning to talk about today?
Yeah, the topics, was that the one you just sent me? See, this
Yeah,
is
it's
a
just the three different segments that we're going to talk about, or the so the way that this works while Ty is bringing that up is that each week we're going to switch off who's the host. So this week I'm the host, for example, and some of the concerns that I had that I want to talk about today were these three topics. And then next week, Ty will have the chance to be the host. and I'll be his co-host, and he'll have his three concerns. So we're planning
Now,
to do three segments.
correct me if I'm wrong. And again, see, this is where we're learning on the podcast. So all you listeners and viewers out there, you're getting it fresh off the ground, fresh off the presses. I'm looking here at segment one, source reliability. Is this the one?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, everybody, we're on the same page. We're all using the same information. So we've got segment one. We're going to be talking about source reliability. And a second segment, we want to talk about addiction resistance. And third segment is immigration. So let's get into our little segment one here, shall we?
Let's do it. Segment one, source reliability. Okay, so I brought this up because it is our kind of our debut podcast. It's our first time having this kind of discussion together. We're figuring things out, but it is a real concern of mine because of the digital age we live in. And Ty, I mean, correct me, am I? Where do you get your information from? Like I know that you have a lot of opinions about politics, about education, about so many different things. Where do you think you get most of your information from?
Most of my information comes from long form discussion podcasts.
Do
So
you? So you listen
uh,
to a lot of podcasters?
I am a podcast junkie. I believe in moderation in all things. So I could use some work, but I listen to everything from church news to true crime podcasts for entertainment to just general news and politics and, trends of the world, pop culture, all the things. Like, because my fortunate lot in life is like an hour commute one way. So so I
So
get to just gobble up.
explain why you have an hour commute. I
Uh,
know what you
so
mean.
yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean.
I used to
Andrew, you
work
were
with
doing
I used to
that's
work at
right.
Ty's business, so I
That's
kind of
right.
know a little bit
And
about.
then Andrew has a soul and he's like, this is not sustainable. And I'm like, don't worry, I kicked my soul, curb stomped my
Oh,
soul a long
I
time
just
ago.
I had to come up with an excuse. But yeah, so you've got an hour commute, you
Okay.
drive around and you listen, you're driving around all day long looking for
Yes.
people that are looking for life insurance, right?
Yes, exactly. Not necessarily door to door, but it is like warmly. So people will send in a lead card requesting information. So I show up on their doorstep, like, hey, you sent this card in. Let's go over it. So,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be knocking their neighbor's door or anything like that, only if they requested the information. So, but yeah, even though my commute is only an hour there and then an hour back, I'm
That's a
also in
lot
my
of
car all day,
that's a lot of
between appointments.
podcasts you can listen
It's a
to.
lot of podcasts. So, a lot of my ideas, they're all taken from some of my better inspirations. So,
Yeah, I don't know if you have a favorite one. I don't actually listen to a lot of podcasters for news, so I'm curious to know what if you've got one in particular that might be your go-to.
that's interesting. So, what I used to do is I would start off just by NPR. Originally, I was just like, okay, let's just get, National Public Radio to come in, tell me what it is, like 5 minute segments. Like the podcast would hit every hour. It'd just give you, the five biggest stories, going on in the US. And eventually I was like, okay, but like, who's going to keep NPR accountable if they're doing things, like, what if our government lies to us?
Because
Does
NPR
NPR
is
write
not
about
biased. They don't get paid by anybody with an interest.
Exactly. So that's where I started though, because I was asking my parents and my in-laws. I was like, where do you get your news? And they told me NPR and stuff like that. And they'll get it from like NBC or CBS, ABC, CNN, very rarely Fox. But that's funny because that's my in-laws. My parents, however, they get it from Fox News. So it's funny to get both sides of stories. It's so great having two sets of parents, one believing in the other, because I get both of what's occupying both of their time. So I pretty much get the news secondhand from them as far as left and right of center. And then for my independent, I like some of my favorite podcasters are like Tim Pool is one of my favorite ones. Just like an independent journalist. Started, back in Occupy Wall Street, which took back in 2008 or whatever. And just ever since then, I've been following him because I was apolitical before 20, I think it was 2013, 14. I just kind of got roped into this. I think everyone did. Like just the the heightened tension. Politics was permeating into every facet of
Building
culture.
up to 2016 when Donald Trump.
Yes,
Well,
yes, and
2000. So 2012 would have been Mitt Romney, right?
yes. So
So
so the reason I started following is because as a Latter-day Saint, I was interested in knowing like, oh, like what would it look like if a member of our church and the same faith like ran in politics? And then I was like, would the member of the church be willing to bend to make concessions in order to appease like a more moderate sensitive? And it's upsetting to me because I'm completely pro-life, and watching anyone take like even a laissez-faire approach to it, or even just like a hands-off approach, I'm like, there's got to be a defense, or at least a better outsource in this. But anyway, regardless of what you think of Mitt Romney, but anyway, so I found it interesting. I was like, oh, that's what it looks like when a member of the church, like, you can't necessarily put all your eggs in one basket. I just learned that, you know just because someone shares the same faith as you, it doesn't mean that they're always gonna
and I think
uphold the same standard.
yeah, I think that's super important. And I love that, because I mean we share your parents, that they get their news only from Fox News pretty much. Um, and and that's there's nothing wrong with that, but it is really important, I think, to get some of these opposing views, not just from secondhand from Fox News saying that these people are saying it. I actually do enjoy it, like you're saying. I enjoy a lot of the reporting on NPR, but I've strayed from them because I get kind of heated about some of the things they report on. But
Yeah.
but it is important. So we're talking about source reliability here, and um, you can't always go to somebody without a biased opinion. There's always going to be a bias. I can remember in college we did a paper on this on sociology of religiosity. It's
Mm.
a big word, right? And I was so excited that I found this third party that was doing all this research on the church and was publishing all these numbers and things that was so pro church. And I kind of followed him. After a few years I found out, well, everybody found out that he was being paid by the church to create these statistics. So that really kind of ruined his reputation among his peers because he was being paid by the church. So I think it's really important. I don't think we discount what they have to say, right? They still find lots of good things and lots of important statistics, but if we don't know where those things are coming from, it can be really dangerous. And I don't have my links. I didn't send out any links to Ty today, but um, even with the things that we learn, the sources that we go to. When I was a kid, Ty, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but when I was a kid, I was taught that if you go to a .gov or a .org website, that you can trust what they're posting online.
That's right.
That is not the case anymore. Let's just put that out there. So now I'm going to ask you, where do you go for online sources to back up what you're wanting to find? Do you go to? I tend to go to Google, and I love Wikipedia because that's kind of the first thing that comes up on Google. But I've done some training on how to put your lists, your Google list, how to get your website at the top of that list. So that's not biased.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say that because as far as seeking online, most of my online searches, like already, I'm like, it's kind of trippy where you scroll through the pages and every single same article, like all the articles are listed. So whoever's curating Google web searches, they need you to see their procured list of what they think is
Right. I mean,
important.
they've got at least
Right.
5 ads that come up first from
Yeah,
businesses that are trying to get money from you because of your search. And
sure.
then you have the individual websites, which I know you can. So in website design, they call this SEO, search engine optimization. So they put keywords in their websites so that when you search for something on Google, it'll show up as an optimized search.
Right.
So
And it may not even be what you're looking for. Like, to be clear, back in the 90s, I'm a 90s child. When I would type something in the internet, I could just type in a keyword phrase and the most closely associated thing would come up. It didn't matter how popular it was or how wacky or zany it was. It was like the thing you were looking for in an instant, and it was incredible. There was really no gatekeepers, or because at first we didn't even know what this was, right? So like, you'd search on Google, you search on any Bing or whatever you were using, and it would just simply try to get you the information that you are looking for. It didn't matter, there was no agenda behind it. And now maybe early on that was altruistic, because maybe there always was an agenda eventually to hit a moment where in time where it feels that way, where I'm like, oh, this isn't any of the information I'm looking for, but I understand why it's all being curated. So in the end, I would just say, um, that's tricky online for sure. There are like great ways you can get around it. Like, as I understand it, you can get like VPNs that will basically hide your browsing
your
location, or
browsing
because this is
history.
crazy. I didn't even realize it. You want to talk about how weird this is, the time we live in. If I have my date and time turned off, I can't even search the internet. And you're like, why does somebody have to know
The date
when
and
and
time.
where and what day I am in order to search the internet? That's like, it's like creepy,
Big Brother kind of stuff.
Big Brother kind of stuff is a good way of saying it.
1984,
But
yeah.
yeah, all that stuff where it's like, oh, like, so because I once went, I was on a trip to Mexico, and I was like, wow, there's like all these great shows. I don't get on Netflix, I don't get on a lot of streaming services, but we have like a family shared account, and I get on Netflix while I'm there, like, because there's nothing to do. So I pop on and I'm like, wow, there's all these great shows on Netflix. I get home and I made a list of like all these shows I was going to watch when I get back, and I found out that it's only specific to
To that country.
Mexico. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like, because they pay for the rights to everything. So that's like when you learn the politics of all these things. You're like, oh, like, things cost different money. People are willing to pay different things for different places. So anyway, so that's
Yeah.
the web searching. It's all crazy. It's all curated.
Well,
And so, like I
so
said, podcasting,
so
I think, is one of the best ways around it personally, because
yeah.
my mind's never been changed really by one article or just a snippet or a phrase or a sentence or anything nice. It comes in the discussion of understanding someone's point of view. And I think, and not everyone has time for it, but I would argue, find the topics that you're interested in and find those long form discussions taking place. Hear someone from your side of the argument and hear them arguing with somebody, or just debating someone from the other standpoint.
Yeah.
I find that those are more enlightening, because I learn more about a subject and hear two sides of an argument, and
Or
I
even
find
just
myself. Mhm.
even just talking to somebody else with a different point of view, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would just urge everyone that's listening or watching, definitely take a deep breath, go outside, talk to your neighbor or talk to a friend, talk to your local grocer. Everyone's pleasant. Online, people are just
I mean,
lascivious. They're evil. They're talking out of their rear ends. A lot of people. So I would just strongly encourage that. Get out into the real world. You'll find that a lot more people than you think are more agreeable. Now, there's plenty of stupid people in the world. I at times behave that way, but there's definitely a lot more hope than you'd think just by reading someone's comment
well, and I
or
want to address that
yeah.
briefly too, because that's a big point in source reliability. I think a lot of people are getting their information from Facebook feeds, from Twitter feeds, from Instagram feeds, from all these sources where so many people can weigh in on their opinion that it's very violent sometimes. Even even something like this, if that someone wants to comment on it, a discussion can go one way or the other, and you never had that intention at all in posting it, right? Do you run into so I'm a victim of this, I think, because we even in the 2016 election, everybody pointed out that we're in these conversation tunnels with our social media,
Mm,
where the people that we're following are the same people that we're trying to reply to. We don't follow a lot of people with different opinions.
yeah,
um,
you're kind of retreating into an echo chamber, if you will. Yeah.
there we go. That's the term that they use,
Yeah.
the echo chamber. And so I definitely fall into this. I have some family that I don't go to Facebook to listen to them rant about politics. I go to Facebook to see what's going on with their kids, or what's going on with them. So what do you use social media for? Do you use social media?
Yeah, so I love using Facebook to sell my junk, like if I have something that's taking up space in my house and I need to get rid of it, I use it for Marketplace and that's it. Like I use it as a Craigslist basically. But
Yeah.
with Craigslist, you get that anonymity that just makes it one step too creepy and a little too shady. So now
Be careful with those. If you're listening, be careful with Craigslist. There,
you'd be
there's you can do a
amazed at
lot
the
of good
things you
with
can
them.
sell on Craigslist. Yeah, yeah. But you can't get away with on Facebook because it's linked to your profile, which kind of adds. And now I'm not saying it's foolproof and it's completely safe. Use caution. Uh,
Yeah.
don't carry a lot of cash to these. And what's amazing is my life has been made safer by technology. Oh my gosh, all of our app tracking. But it's kind of like you said, Orwellian in 1984. It's kind of scary because it's like
Mhm.
we are being tracked in one way, but it has drastically reduced crime. Like every single
Well,
one of your
and
apps track your location.
yeah.
So if you go missing somewhere, we know every single place that you've been, and it's just incredible. So
But again, I mean, just because you use those things doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, or there's something wrong with using those things. I think it's just
absolutely
important, like you're saying, like we were talking about, recognize, hey, I'm in an echo chamber. This is probably not the same viewpoint as Joe down the street
right.
here, right? Or in the White House, right? So make sure that when you're using these sources, social media, Google, websites, any website, right? Just be careful when you're out there, but do go out and get some different opinions to see what's going on.
Highly encourage moderation, just because, again, you might be convinced that everyone is believing a certain way, but realize that a lot of the people on social media, it's basically a game in which you say the most inflammatory or the most divisive and polarizing comment is going to be like no one's going to be retweeting or reposting or up liking or liking or sharing and furthering a comment that's like, hey guys, let's all come together, let's
Yeah, yeah,
let's all just
right.
forgive our fathers and move
I
on.
love you. Yeah,
I love you.
that's a post for everybody out there, right?
Exactly, like, hey everybody, if you're having a bad day, we just know that somebody out there loves you. That's not what's getting the attention.
No.
So I think that there's how I use social media. Like I said, I go on Facebook anytime I need to sell something. So I'm not a good arbiter. Like I had Facebook when I started in high school, and it was something that like, oh, you can meet people in high school, you can friend all these people in high school, and then after you graduate high school, never see those people again and get anxiety when you think about even getting on Facebook that someone from your high school is going to message you and be
Yeah,
like, hey, you're online right now. You want to talk? And you're like,
yeah,
I'd rather not. I'm not
yeah.
here. So then you hide your history, and then you're like, I don't even use it anymore. I served a 2-year mission for my church. When I came home, a lot of Chileans were asking me to buy them cell phones and send them, things from America to Chile. And I'm like, this is stressing me out. So I'm just not going to use Facebook
Yeah.
anymore.
Learn where you
So
can curb it, right?
yeah. And that's where it
Well,
started, getting overwhelmed. But
we can go on longer about this, and we will probably revisit social media again,
yeah.
especially. But let's move into our second segment, into addiction resistance. I wanted to introduce this topic. Um, so Ty, I don't know what you see out there in the Midwest, the North Midwest, the north of the United States.
We're basically Canada of the
You're
United
Canada,
States.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you see in
Minnesota.
Canada.
Yeah. And Wisconsin. Yeah. We're really trying to
Uh,
be,
um, so here on the West Coast, there's a huge drug problem, and like I said, I'm coming to you from Nevada, and I was stunned. I grew up in Utah. I worked in Texas. I worked in New York. I worked in Missouri, um, and now we live in Nevada. I've never seen so many people smoking.
mm,
I don't know what it's like. I don't know if that's because of the casinos or what. It hasn't been long that, in fact, I think there are still some casinos where you can go and smoke. And they have these great buffets in these casinos. And Cassandra and I, my wife and I, we went to one when we first lived here. but you had to walk through the casino and smell all the smoke, and it just gave me a headache. I think we went 2 or 3 times, and
And maybe trip and fall and accidentally throw a quarter into the slot machine and accidentally pull the lever with the other hand as you got up, right?
I've never done that.
No, of course not.
Well, but beyond that, so that's here in Nevada. But there's a huge movement of drugs and homelessness taking place, particularly in San Francisco and Portland. Uh, uh, Fentanyl is a huge problem, and that's usually just well, I wish I could speak more to the statistics, but that's illegal drugs. Those are drugs you're buying off the street. But so many people are just okay with that that they do it. Even opioids. I went to the doctor for something last year for some headaches, and she said, "Well, let me prescribe this for your migraines. I only have them 2 or 3 times a year." So I went and picked it up at the pharmacy, and the pharmacy had messed up the prescription. The doctor's prescription had an additional couple lines or something. The pharmacy didn't see that and gave me an opioid. And if I had taken that, I don't know if I would have become addicted or not. But I mean, and it's not just drugs, it's not just alcohol, it's not just pornography, it's not just uh, rioting or watching TV or gaming. There are so many things that can become addictive. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about addiction. And I mean, I originally came into this thinking about drugs, and I don't know, did you grow up with the D.A.R.E program in your school?
Oh yeah. I don't even remember what the acronyms stand for. Don't
Um,
advocate.
Here, I
I
can
don't
look
know
it
what it
up real
stands for.
quick. Tell me about the D.A.R.E
Recreational
program for
drug us.
you. Why was the D.A.R.E program a part of you? Like, how was it a part of your life?
I don't even know. So I went to elementary school in Utah and graduated high school in Wisconsin. So to me, it was like early on they were talking about D.A.R.E. I'd see the T-shirts. People were talking about drug crisis, and I'm like, it just never was a part of my life. Like no one in my family's done drugs, at least that I'm aware. uh, right, Andrew?
Uh,
So
I'm not. I got my opioids in the trash.
exactly. You're like, I'm only going to take what the doctors prescribe, man. Um, so gosh, yeah. As far as drug, like that's just I've just been very fortunate and very sheltered. Like everyone that I heard, the closest I ever got to drugs is like friends in high school that were like, yeah, we're gonna have a party and there'll be like weed there or something like that. You can come. And I think I was working at the Piggly Wiggly at the time, and I'm like, yeah, man, I got a late shift at the pig. What are you
Just so
gonna
you
do?
know, anybody listening to this, Piggly Wiggly, that was in Wisconsin.
Yes,
So,
yes. And so, that's like the closest I ever came to drugs. But as far as I know about the drug scene, I would just argue that I think a lot of this has to do with the lingering effects of a global economic shutdown. I think a lot of people felt the effects. Substance abuse was on the rise, domestic violence was on the rise. A lot of issues arise from shutting everyone down into their homes, heightened hysteria, fear of the virus, all kinds of things. I think a
um,
lot of so I just think a lot of abuse and addiction resulted as a lot of people became idle and they turned to substances to try to numb or escape their reality. So I
well,
think that's why we're seeing a rise and it's continued to escalate.
I want to talk about that a little bit because I did do a
Mm.
little bit of research on it. So D.A.R.E stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education.
I knew that D stood for drugs. I
Yeah,
actually said the
right.
word
That was
don't.
the easy one.
I
And
was
and
wrong.
E education, right?
Dare to do drugs. No, dare to not do drugs, I think.
And
And I'm like,
that
it's
was
not a dare? It's
yeah.
crazy.
So I don't know if you've noticed that D.A.R.E lost its funding about well, yeah, probably about 10 years now, 10 years ago. So
Because it
they're no
turns out they
longer
were just
doing
part
those.
of a big drug ring or something.
Well, they tried for years. In my research, I found that they tried for years to refute all of the evidence that that program was not helping kids. If anything, it was kind of encouraging to live. Wait, like these kids are out partying, doing drugs. So like
I want to go.
the whole stop, it was having kind of a reverse effect, is what they found. So I but here's why I was thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it for the past month. Because the D.A.R.E program, who came in and taught you? And I think I know the answer because I think it was the same.
I wouldn't know. The
You
black
you
t-shirt with
don't
the red
remember?
lettering. No, I don't remember.
So it was a police officer.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So a
I was
police
thinking, half
officer.
expecting like a celebrity or
Yeah,
politician.
yeah, no celebrities. Although
Yeah,
I
a
think there
police
were
officer
some, like MC Hammer did like a little promo for it or something, so they could put it in their program. But
before his eighth file for bankruptcy.
uh, do a little rap for the D.A.R.E program. Um, so,
Abstinence is cool.
but what I was thinking about is I don't know that I remember one thing in particular about the D.A.R.E program other than there's a cop that came and he had a cool Corvette that was all decked out with D.A.R.E. And we wore our red ribbons, right? The red ribbon week
Mm,
to resist drugs. Um, and so I started thinking about our society's viewpoint on police, the defund police movement. So that is a major political movement right now, to either defund or to what's the other, to completely,
reimagine.
yeah, to reassess what police officers do or to kick them out. Like I don't understand how you could live that way, but apparently Portland is kind of adopting that viewpoint. Um, do we have are our kids seeing officers in their classrooms other than just guarding the hallways, and sometimes not even doing that?
Mm,
How do our kids view public responders, firemen, EMTs? Where do they get any information on what their job is other than, oh, there's an emergency, so you call 911, right? There's a lot more that they do. Um, what have you seen in Wisconsin? Because I know you grew up with that D.A.R.E program in Utah, but
mm,
you remember more from your childhood in Wisconsin, right? I
for
mean,
sure.
that was your high school and with a little bit of junior high too, right?
Hmm. And that's the biggest problem for me is growing up in small town. Like after we moved to a tiny little place called Wanakee. Now, if you look at Wanakee now, it's exploded. They've sold up all the farmland surrounding the high school. I mean, like my high school was like a hick town, bring your tractor to school day, like just so this is very small town. So I gotta say, as far it largely had to do with booze. Like the football players would get together at a barn somewhere, they'd have alcohol served there. That's like the extent of it. Maybe weed, never hard drugs or anything like that. And that's the benefit. Now, I will say my friend that went to Memorial High School closer to Madison, and he saw plenty of drug running in school. He saw plenty of uh, you know, adolescent violence, juvenile delinquents, a lot of crime, a lot of kids have, leaving high school, dropping out, going to juvie, being arrested on charges, even being tried as adults in some cases. Crazy. So he definitely had experience. He'd be a fun guest to bring on sometime to talk about that because he largely dealt with that world, and that's a blind spot in my mind or in
Yeah,
my life.
yeah. Well, we should revisit this maybe and bring in some people that have gone through some of that stuff because I think it's something that our audience needs to hear. They
Mm,
may not want to talk about drugs so much, but um, with the way that we get social influence through our peers, um, I mean, it's a completely different world from what we grew up in,
yeah.
right? Um, and and I think you're probably in the same boat as I am, where somehow I just got really lucky and I had some really great friends and we all just kind of hung out together and we loved doing fun things without drugs or alcohol or any of that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people, even today, whether it's for a party or whatever, I think it's more. I think we're talking more about prescription problems going on right now. We
For
have
sure.
a society that's kind of addicted to drugs and pain mediation that can really steer us in a wrong direction. So maybe let's revisit that another time.
For sure.
Anything else
I
you got
would
to say
just
about
argue, like, I've never once given, I am not a medical professional in any means, so I don't give any advice. But I will say, working with seniors, I hear from, it's 50-50. It's like split. A lot of seniors will say, I've been prescribed medications, but I don't take them. They were over medicated, like they've taken, pages and pages. They'd bring out entire suitcases filled with medication.
yeah,
And then
and we're
eventually they were
talking we're
like, it's
talking
just enough.
about what
Seniors. Yeah.
65 and older,
Yeah.
55 and older.
Yeah.
So
55 and
not
older
to be
is
confused with high school seniors, which you were just talking about a second ago.
true. Yep. So switching gears, but
Yeah,
just like this is what I've seen is a lot of them are like, I just feel so much better not taking them.
yeah,
And then I see others that are like, I have debilitating pain, crippling pain. I can't go without them. I would just argue that it's hard for a doctor to assess what's going on because they only have your word. So I think a
yeah,
lot of people mistakenly say, like, well, I'm feeling pain. And they're like, well, if you're feeling pain, like, let's prescribe you something that'll help the pain. Your pain might be a one or two. It might go away on its own. I don't know. Like, and
yeah,
I don't, largely the doctor is trying to help ease the tension now. But I think always when you're taking a medication, just as personal advice, and this is not doctor advice, just try to seek ways to better yourself on your own in hopes that maybe one day you can wean off the medication.
yeah.
Obviously, only at the recommendation of your doctor,
Well,
or
and
but
this kind of speaks to your profession, I think,
mm,
because I did sell for a couple months, and I know your script and everything.
mm,
And when you go through that script and you say, okay, this would qualify you for this type of life insurance, but not that one because you've been taking this drug. And that's actually why I looked into the drug when I was first prescribed it, and I found what it was, and I was like, oh, if I take this, I will never qualify for life insurance again unless it's like $100 every 3 weeks or something.
and that is one thing that is absolutely bonkers. We all have what's called the MIB report, and it follows this all. Your doctor has your social. Anytime he prescribes you a medication, it gets put on that list. And even if you took it one time, that will follow you until kingdom
Yeah,
come. And one thing to keep in mind, again, without going on a tangent, they originally did it to stop crime, right? Like people that would go to one doctor, get prescribed morphine. I'm feeling a lot of pain, doc. Morphine. Go to another doctor. I'm feeling a lot of pain. Get more morphine, and then they'd sell the excess morphine. Or opiates, or whatever you want to do, right? And so doctors are like, we got to find a way, or police, police force, we're like, we got to stop people from over medicating or even selling drugs. So a quick way to fix this is every prescription you're prescribed is linked to your social security number and inherently linked to you. So they know how much medications you're taking, but it's really to stop crime. But now insurance companies
yeah.
found out really quickly we can approve someone based on their health, based on the medications they've
And
taken.
yeah, that
And
database is now open to a lot of
so
people.
that's what you kids listen to the podcast have to look forward to in the future.
But
Yeah.
no, I think it's important to address it now because
Yes.
um, even innocent drugs, like I have some blood pressure medicine that they have blood pressure medicine that would appear on that list that I remember from selling, but this one's not one of those,
Hmm.
and it's because I did my research on it, right? Like you can you can find different and alternative ways to get the medicine that you need without sending red flags about, and the reason they send red flags because we've all heard that speedy voice at the end of a commercial, at the end of an ad, this drug may cause death or something
It
just
may increase
really
your thoughts of
silly.
suicide. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bleeding,
yeah,
nausea, vomiting. Like you're like, all symptoms worse than my original problem to start with. I'm
yeah,
masking a symptom and I'm likely causing much more harm to my kidneys
yeah,
and liver than I ever was to stop the pain in the first place. Now, like I said, we're not doctors, but there's something to be said about that. And I would just encourage that everyone, no matter who you are, what your situation is, and this isn't even like some hippie thing. It's just like just realize that we're biological bodies and we're throwing in chemicals to try to run the machine.
yeah,
Try your darndest to do just natural
yeah.
like
And
changes in
again,
your life, and they're not
because
fun,
those you can use
diet,
those
exercise, whatever it is.
drugs,
Yeah.
like they made
Get
those
some
drugs
vitamin
for a
D,
reason.
get some supplements, a lot of good things you can do. And that's all I'm saying is, and I'm not saying people that take medication, like I said, When my doctor prescribes a medication, okay, because I will be taking, because there's very little in my life that I want to change or
But
regulate. I want to
there's
eliminate.
a reason why they tell you to get a second opinion is because
Yes.
yeah, a different doctor will have learned a different route to medicate that pain, right? Or whatever the pain is. So okay, let's move into our final segment, and of course we're going overtime here. But finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about immigration, which is a hot topic, and we're not always going to be addressing current events, but here is a big one: the crisis at the border. Give me your take on the crisis at the border, because we've got a lot of right now. We have the governor of Texas who is sending, and I learned this morning, the bus ticket to New York from Texas is $200. So who's paying for that is the taxpayers of Texas are paying for the bus ticket.
Mhm.
But if they didn't pay for the gas ticket or for the bus ticket, then they're going to have to pay for the food and the living for that person to stay in Texas. And so, what is one of your biggest concerns about our border crisis?
I think the biggest concern is it's like a PR disaster. A lot of people think it's like the humane thing to do is just to open all borders and to ensure that everyone gets a fair shot coming to this country. And in an altruistic world, I think it sounds great, or in a perfect world, sorry, it sounds like a great idea. Tragically, there's a lot of crime which comes with the advent of, a border. You have drug running, child trafficking, human trafficking. You have a lot of crime that comes with this, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people, even to their detriment, they think they're being merciful by saying, yeah, just come here, figure out what we're going to do, and we'll try to, figure it out for you. I mean, this is a problem that's been going on for a long time, and it hasn't stopped. It's not slowing
Yeah.
down. In fact, it's ramping up. And
An interesting thing I
yeah.
remember last year. So we've just passed 1 year of our president pulling soldiers out of Afghanistan.
Mm,
So Afghanistan, Kabul, they had a huge prison there that was turned over to the Taliban, and the prisoners were members of the Taliban or Al Qaeda, and they were released because Taliban now controls it. And there was an interesting statistic. They can't, of course, track everybody, but um, they did see an uptick in immigration like a week after Afghanistan fell.
mm,
So where are those prisoners going? Those terrorists that used to be, you know, fighting against us or planning against us. I mean, we have a real problem with crime. I think people laughed when President Trump talked about it because he says things that make people laugh, whether it's derogatory or laughing with him or laughing at him or whatever. But he's right. We've got a lot of criminals. None of those people are being screened, right? I mean,
mm.
that's my understanding is that
So
police
so
are just
he
stepping
so
aside.
there was a huge spike in immigration, illegal immigration, I should say, when Trump was in office. And so he enacted something called the Remain in Mexico policy. Basically, the idea is until you get your court hearing and your summons, you can get your citizenship through the right channels, but you need to wait and remain in Mexico until we are ready to receive you, because we're just overwhelmed. We only have so many workers working at the border. We're just overwhelmed by sheer numbers, just masses and masses of people showing up, and unfortunately a lot of people being separated from their families, and a lot of people thought like, oh, this is like a inhumane thing. Again, these are people that are trafficking children that aren't their own. Like, I'm not saying all of them were, but what I'm saying is this is
They're
happening. And so
being
it's like
paid to do this.
they're being paid to do this. These are they call them coyotes, not real animals. They're coyotes. They run people, they run drugs. And so tragically this is happening. And so you have these kids that are at the threat of their lives, and against their will they're being told like, you tell them I'm your parent, or otherwise you're dead and your family's dead, or whatever, right? They terrorize these kids, they terrify them. And so they're doing these crazy things like this, and it's like, okay, here's an idea: remain in Mexico, don't rush the border all at once. When you're ready and we're ready to receive you, you'll be summoned. You can come here, make your case. If you're pleading asylum or whatever it is. It's so crazy because I know initially when asylum was created, it was like, if you're under an oppressive government, like I think America's policy was always like, send us you're needy, you're poor, you're hungry, or whatever. Like we want to take you in, we want to help you.
And we really
But
do. I
we
mean,
really
we
do.
love,
Let's not kid
yeah,
ourselves. We take in more immigrants than I think
and
just
we
about
love
all other
legal
nations combined.
immigrants, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yes, and it's crazy. Immigrant families, they hate illegal immigrants. That's one thing that we don't talk about either. Like, no one likes illegal citizens coming in here and harming the way of life. A lot of bad actors. A lot of people are really grateful for the opportunity to live in this great and wealthy nation, and tragically, there's a lot of harm that is done by people that are just acting in bad faith. Like they never came, they didn't obey the rules to get here. They're not going to start playing by our rules once they're here and they're
right.
already in the system. And a lot of them go unnoticed because their courts, there's just too many. So they're
So
like, hey, remain here in the US and then come for your courts. And then when they
yeah,
don't show up, we don't know where they are. They don't know where they go.
I
There's no way
think
to
we
track
kind of
them.
got derailed there for a second. So you were
Yeah.
explaining President Trump's policy. Now that
Yes.
President Biden is the president, what
So
does he
he
do to
he
Trump's
initially
policy?
he initially had a very welcoming presence where it was like, hey, come here, we'll take you on. Then the borders got flooded. We had immigrants coming in from all Central and South American countries. We had immigrants coming from Europe. They had to go all the way down to South America, come up through the Central America, and they make their way to the border. I mean, we had like there was a huge was it Haitians, like a huge
I
like
can imagine the
yeah,
Haitian, the
and they're
Cubans for
coming from the
sure are
south
going to
border.
Florida.
Yes, and they were all flooding the border, and you're like, well, that's strange. Like they're coming through different channels. They're all flying to South America and Central America and just coming across the border that way. And again, what was crazy is like they're like, okay, Trump's policy was so inhumane. He's using cages to separate families. And it turns out like they're now reversing policy and they're literally just doing the same thing because it was working. It's like remain in Mexico. You need to remain in the country you were in because we cannot receive you right now. Because
Yeah.
like you said, we now have buses just full of people. It's just cheaper for Texas to say, you know what, send them up to New York, send them to DC,
Well,
and have
and
them deal with the this
it,
this crisis because it's like we're overwhelmed here,
yeah,
and you as the federal government, borders along different countries is a federal problem. It's a federal issue that needs to be addressed, and it's
and it's a
largely
strong
not being
point.
addressed.
It's
Yes,
it's a
yes,
really, I mean, a lot of people are calling that a political move, and it is a political move because
yes.
it needs to be made. I mean, the point is Washington D.C., New York, any of these places can say, "Oh, we're a sanctuary city. We welcome anybody that's looking for sanctuary." So, okay, we're going to send you these people that are looking for sanctuary. Just to let you know, we're letting in thousands of people every single day into Texas. They cannot all just stay right here,
Mhm.
right? So this is a huge issue. Again, we love immigrants. We love even a lot of the illegal immigrants are a lot of fun, and they're good people. But there's some bad actors. I used to joke actually that um, I'm glad that well, I think that the United States has a big interest in Mexico not being organized because if they ever did get organized, our southern border would not be protected at all. We'd be in big trouble,
Mhm.
right?
For sure.
Well,
Yeah,
Ty, I know we could keep going. Both of us, we're in we've got a dog in the fight for all of these topics, but we should probably end there. I appreciate you coming on today.
for sure.
Any final thoughts or words?
We can hear about these issues, and as far as proposing an idea, I would think that I, what I was taught in even high school, as early as high school, is to be a critical thinker. You're supposed to observe, you're supposed to ponder, and then you're supposed to react. You should think before you speak. I think a lot of our problems here today, if we all just spent a little bit more time thinking, a little bit more time pondering before we were so reactionary, because we live in a culture that's reactionary, right? It's like,
Yeah,
react to this video. What's your thoughts on it? You should have a stance. You're like, maybe I don't have an opinion yet.
yeah.
Maybe I should sit on it for a little while, think it over, because I would strongly encourage, the term hot take. It's like, oh, my hot take is this. You might regret it later on. And so I would just encourage everyone out there that's listening or watching this is before you speak, think, meditate on it, mull it over and think, what like
Check out some different viewpoints. Yeah,
yes,
check
open
out
up your
some.
mind, and
Yeah.
and before you result to anger, think about maybe why it's causing anger, but also choose to be amused. Think like, why is this working? Or take everything with a grain of salt is my point. Figure
Yeah.
out the source, figure out what
Maybe
the
before
intent
you
is.
post a video condemning everybody that's conservative or
Yes, you're
liberal for
liberal.
that. I mean, any group, before you
Yes,
condemn any group. Yeah, I love that. I'll give you an amen to that, Ty. I like that a lot.
for sure. Just think about it,
So
because again, we live in a hyper reactionary time, because that's the only thing that's popularized now is outrage, is vague expressions and feelings about stuff. But you know what? We live in a time where, here's the thing. Does anyone go through life thinking that they're wrong? Like, do you ever think you're wrong? And the thing is, you could be in an argument with two people and both think they're right.
yeah.
In the end, we live in a world of seven and a
Or
half
or
billion
you could
people,
both
baby.
be you could both know that you're wrong,
You both know you're
but
wrong,
never admit it.
but you would
Right.
never admit it to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can we all be right? We've got 7.5 billion people on this planet. Can we all be right? We're all going through life knowing that I'm right.
Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt, and keep a prayer in your heart, and just always uh, think before you speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
Start there.
You don't necessarily need to share it in your elders quorum or relief society either. Um, but talk to
Sorry.
members of the church.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some family that have lived in those kind of areas where they want to bring that up in church, and it's not really a topic for church. We go to church to live the gospel, to help each other through these struggles, and um, these types of discussions are not meant for those for that place for church. So we're gonna have them here. So
Time and a
we'll,
place, everybody. Time and a
yeah,
place.
you can comment on this video or get into a fight. We may not watch it, but or get involved in it, but know that we're trying to listen. We're trying to stay in touch. And if you've got a concern that you would like us to address, send us a note as well. So, all right. Thank you, Ty.
Yeah, Andrew, it's great seeing you. Take
Have a
care,
good
buddy.
night. See ya.
Stay safe and stay out of trouble now, you hear?